everyone, and welcome to another video. I'm Simply G, and today I'm showing off everything that I got for the month of February. A little bit to get through, diverse amount of items that I got this month, including some anime, including an art book, which is, I haven't had one of those in a little while. So rather than spend too long on this intro, I'll get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So first up, we'll start with the anime. It is actually 2 seasons of the same show. These I got secondhand from CEX, which is a sort of secondhand dealer. There's not actually one local to me. I've never been into a physical store for these, but I've bought online from them for quite a while. I believe it started in the UK. The UK and that whole area has these, but Australia, I believe, only has them on the East Coast. So yeah, that's the big reason why I've never gone in, but it does mean that I'm able to get pretty good deals on secondhand films and anime a lot. So what I got this month was the complete seasons 1 and 2 of the 2019, or the most recent Fruits Basket adaptation. So this collects the first 50-ish episodes, 48, 50 episodes of the newer Fruits Basket anime adaptation. So that all that leaves is season 3, which is I think only 12 or 13 episodes, and then the prequel movie, which I may or may not get. I'm kind of a little bit on the fence as to whether I will pick that one up. I'm a bit of a completionist, so I probably will. But yeah, I really enjoy Fruits Basket. It's a classic series. It's one that was well overdue for a new anime adaptation. This one is much closer to the manga, which is a very, there's a reason it's beloved and is so well regarded. I own the Yen Press release of the manga, the newer release. I previously owned the Cheongyi release, which was the Australian local release, the singles for that. It's just one of those series that was, I would argue, quite foundational for the early anime and manga fandom of the early mid 2000s. One that is very important to a lot of people. My co-host Ray, aka Whimsical Pictures, on the podcast, this is her favorite series. Maybe not this adaptation, but the manga is just her be-all end-all. It's her favorite. Yeah, it means a lot to a lot of people, and it is a phenomenal story if you've never tried it. This is a really good adaptation. I admittedly have not finished this adaptation. I watched the first season mostly as it came out. I've seen about half of the second season, so I do actually need to sit down and watch these discs and then continue on with that last season. But considering how much I liked what it was doing, I don't expect to dislike it. I don't think they could change too much to the series to make me dislike it, unless it just completely went off the rails in a similar style to the original anime adaptation. I don't know. So yeah, Fruits Basket, for those somehow who don't know the story of this, is a series about a teenage girl called Toru Honda, who, after losing her mother, and she kind of leaves of her own volition her grandfather's house, so she's homeless, and decides to live in a tent in what she thinks is just like the woods. But she finds out that that's actually like a big, or it's a piece of land. She's living on a big property owned by the family of one of her peers, one of her classmates, the very popular and aloof Yuki Soma. And when he finds her, he invites her to stay with him and his older cousin, Shigure, and then we then are introduced to another cousin who is Kyo, the redhead. And so over the course, very early on, she discovers that the Soma, or certain members of the Soma family, are placed under this curse, where if they are embraced by the opposite sex, they turn into one of the animals of the Chinese zodiac, plus the cat, who was kind of banished and punished from the zodiac after being fooled by the rat. So there's a big history. Yuki Soma is the rat and Kyo is the cat, so they have some, existing rivalry and trauma from that, but all of the 12 plus 1, 13 members of the zodiac system are stuck in this very terrible cycle of abuse, generational abuse and trauma. And so Toru is the first non-family member, extended family member, I should say, who has learnt about this curse, and because of that, it's actually caused a shift in these people's lives for the first time, gives a lot of them hope for the first time. It's a wonderful, beautiful story about survival and grief and trauma and just very good things. Not good things, but it's handled very well. And as I said, there's a reason why this is so beloved. It isn't just like a reverse harem style of high school rom-com. It really isn't a comedy at all. It does have a little bit of comedic elements to it, but it's not. I think people see high school drama, romance dramas, and perceive them to be quite melodramatic, and especially in the era that this was being released. I'm not saying that there's no melodrama in this series, but it handles a lot of very tough elements very, very well. So if you haven't given it a shot, please do check it out. It is well worth the time. On to merchandise. I also got a figure this month. Technically it's a 1/8 scale, but oh my gosh, I do not think that is true. This is the 1/8 scale of childhood version Wei Wuxian from the Danmai series. Modao Zushi, aka the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation by MXTX. It has a donghua, which is like an animated version. You can watch the entirety of legally with English subtitles on YouTube. You can also read, I don't think the final volume's out quite yet, but the English release of the novel has been put out by Seven Seas. There's also a comic version, which is being put out by Seven Seas as well. That just came out. There's also a live action version called The Untamed, which is available on Netflix, 50-ish episodes. So there's a lot of Modao Zushi to enjoy. This is the main character as his childhood self. There will also be another release for the other main character, Lanzhan or Lan Wangji, who is, the other half of the couple for this series, in a similar style, kind of a childhood cute version. I love Wei Wuxian. I think he's a fantastic character, really interesting protagonist. The story is just I really, 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 really like everything that MXTX has written. I've enjoyed all of her works. Probably this series is most well known because of all of these various adaptations. It really grew in popularity over the pandemic. I watched the first season of the show, of the animated version, the donghua, over the pandemic, and then, well, actually the first 2 seasons, or the first season and the second season came out, and then the third season came out about a year later. So I've seen all of that. I've only just started, or I've only seen a couple episodes of the live action version. They're longer episodes and I don't have that much time. But I've read the novel as well. Only through 7 seasons release. I don't have time to track down fan translations of things. I don't have that time or energy. But yeah, regardless, was really, this you can tell this is one of the more popular danmei just in general because of the amount of merchandise that it gets. Similarly to the other MXTX super popular series, Heaven Official Blessing, that gets a lot of merchandise from like Chinese manufacturers, as does Modao Zushi. But this is, I believe, from, Good Smile. So we have these chibi scales, kind of not scales. We also have a 1/8 scale figure of the adult versions of these characters coming out, as well as a 1/8 scale, I believe it's 1/8 scale, of this character in his Yiling patriarch version, which is kind of his original, it's the whole thing, but which is early on in the story. So you can tell there's money to be made. Manufacturers are well aware that people will buy these, and of course me as a supportive consumer, I have bought a lot of figures, both like chibi and scale, for MXTX's works. So this one has just arrived. The Lanzhan one has, I think it's been released in China and maybe Japan. I don't think I'm going to get mine for another couple months, just because I pre-order all of my figures now from local websites or local stores, so it takes a little while for them to get their stock. I also have my Yiling Patriarch scale on order. That's just been released in China, so hopefully I'll get him soon. And then I also have the scale figure with both characters. That's not planned to come out till, I don't think, till next year, maybe late this year. I don't really remember. But yeah, I really think this is an adorable little figure. As I said, it's described, or initially was described, as a 1/8 scale. I look at him compared to other 1/8 scales that I have. He is so much bigger than what you would expect for a child character. Even like bigger for a 1/7 scale, because I have a couple of those too. I'd say he's probably closer to a 1/6 scale, for considering this is meant to be him at like 4 or 5 years old. Just his head size in comparison to like some of my 1/7 scales. Like, I'm looking at my little fox from Natsume's Book of Friends. He's a 1/7 scale, and his head is so much smaller than this release. And of course, there's going to be a element of like the chibification that's probably influencing some of that, but I was not expecting him to be as big as he was or is. Adorable little release. I really, really love him, and I cannot wait for my Lanzhan so I can display them together and they can be just cute, adorable children together. More merch, typical for me. I have 2 birthday clear files for Free, specifically Free the Final Stroke. This is for Ray and Momo. Yes, I always forget not his name, but so this picture looks a little bit like Asahi. Yeah, I mean, I say this like every year, and I'm like, oh, this must be the last time that they have these birthday clear file releases, and then I will be free. But then Kyoto Animation keeps making more. I do think that these are actually the last ones. The series of artwork and birthday releases are the last ones, because the final movies are out / being released very soon. So I can only hope I will be free from having to purchase it. And of course, obviously I don't have to purchase them, but I do really like this art style, and this series of artwork is actually some of my favorite so far. And there's a little bit of glittery with these. So yeah, I mean, I typically just keep these and display them, or not display them. I keep them in a clear file folder. But I am trying to use some of my clear files for like my actual paperwork at home or in my home office, not in my day-to-day, you know, corporate setting, but when I'm working from home, I do try to use them a little bit more, so they're not completely superfluous, impulsive purchases. But yeah, I mean, as always, I'm a big Free fan. I've been following this series since day one, and yeah, I mean, that's 10 years. That's 10 years of being a fan, which is kind of horrifying. Next, we have an art book, one that I was wanting for quite a while, but it wasn't the highest priority. But with the recent manga license announcement, I decided to finally bite the bullet and get it, and I'm very happy that I did. It's beautiful. I got this from Mandarake. So this is Innocent Blue, or Bleu, by Sakamoto Shinichi. This is for his 2 series, Innocent and Innocent Rouge, which is kind of a retelling of the French Revolution. And yeah, I look very much forward to reading this series. It's one that has gotten a lot of like public or fan interest via scans. I haven't read it, but my historical fiction is definitely my thing, especially if it's gender as fuck, and this one absolutely is. It also comes with a black and white booklet, which has mainly interviews, some additional black and white artistry. But yeah, I look forward to actually reading this series. I also look forward to reading his other manga, which just got licensed by Viz. So Dark Horse has licensed this manga in particular, but Viz has licensed his other work, which is an adaptation of Dracula. And oh my gosh, both of them are definitely on the buy list for me, because it just is exactly the kind of stuff that I enjoy. Historical fiction, reimagining of classic lit, vampires. I'm not as big of a vampire fiend as as Ray, again, Whimsical Pictures is, but I do enjoy a good gothy horror series, and I really enjoy kind of these interesting reimaginings of familiar tropes and premises. So yeah, I'm hoping that this will just be another really great, fun maybe heartbreaking addition to the collection, but this art book is absolutely beautiful. I don't necessarily know if there wasn't a huge amount of copies. This was the last copy that I could find on Mandarake. You might get lucky with a copy on like eBay, something like that, but they tend to be way more overpriced. You might be able to find a copy on like Yahoo Japan auctions. I don't know. So yeah, happy to finally have this one. On to the manga. This month we have a couple debuts, no finales, which is, I don't want to say normal, but I do have a sizable amount of manga, not too much. But first for the debuts is a complete, like, 1-volume release. I believe it was a 2-volume release in Japan, so this is an omnibus. I haven't read this one, I will say, so I can't speak to the quality of it, but it's one that I was very interested when it was licensed because it's very outside of the typical fare for this publisher. So this is Yoko Komori's Josei series, Mermaid Scales and the Town of Sand. This is released by Viz, and it's the story of a girl who I think discovers mermaids or finds mermaids, something like that. I haven't read it, but this isn't exactly what you would expect for a Viz release. I think most people kind of recognize Viz as obviously very much focused on their Shonen Jump line, understandably, as well as like Shoujo Beat and to a lesser extent Sublime, with the odd like Jump Plus and Jump Square title kind of being slotted in. But to see a Josei series come out from them, and especially come out from Viz not related to the Shoujo Beat line, is pretty interesting. So I'm hoping this is a good indication of like a little bit more diversification or calculated risk on behalf of Viz, because I honestly don't have an issue with how much shonen and like action shonen, like the fact that we do get a majority of Shonen Jump's releases in print. Almost all of them are currently, the only few that I can think of that haven't been, especially since the app launch, have been series that get cancelled very early on or are specifically very gag or comedy focused, and that's also changing with stuff like Yozakura Spy Family, whatever that one's called. I don't know. Like that was print or digital only for a long time. Now it's also seeing a print release. I don't have an issue with that, and I think it's a very smart business decision. But yeah, I'd be really excited to see more of this kind of release from Viz. I'm very much looking forward to. I mean, they've definitely upped their game in regards to horror releases. We've seen that obviously over the years with Junji Ito, but also the stuff that I care about is like Ume's releases. I cannot wait for Cat-Eyed Boy re-release. They just announced a like special edition or an anniversary collection for Tech on Kincrete, which is super duper exciting. I'm definitely getting that, even though I have the big like all-in-one collection. I love Tech on Kincrete. So yeah, I'm hoping that Viz, along with the other publishers, are becoming more confident in licensing things that aren't like absolute guaranteed bestsellers, like Shonen Jump hits. It'd be well worth it, I think. And the fact that the manga market is so large now, is so diverse, is so... the market is very receptive to all sorts of stories. I think there's nothing better than seeing one of the major, if not the major publisher bringing out stories that might be a little bit against the grain. Next, we have a Seven Seas release debut. This is a 3-volume series in Japanese, so not super duper long. This is The Night Blooms Behind Castle Walls, Volume 1 by Masanari Yuruka. This is the story of a young female squire who is trying and training to be a knight. She's also hiding the fact that she's a girl from everyone. From context of this first volume, or that we get implied in flashbacks and things, she previously was royalty, or at least a pretty prominent member of a different country, which fell to war, or was besieged or something. And so after her parents were killed, or she was driven from her family or whatever, she has joined this neighboring kingdom and obviously plans to become stronger. And in order to do that, because girls and young women are not able to become knights, she is hiding her true identity. This is cute. It's very sweet. I think it's the type of story that is, I don't know, like a lot of this is a bit more like day-to-day slow life, slice of life style of storytelling. There's a lot, I'll see if I can find specifically what I'm talking about. There's a lot of specific descriptions of like you can see how candles are made there. Like it's a little bit more informational than it might be otherwise. It's not really focused on action or adventure, or even like a story of revenge or anything. So because of that, I do think that like 3-4 volumes is sort of the perfect length for this sort of story. I'll also make note, and this wasn't inherently clear with the marketing on this, or if it was, I just wasn't paying attention. But I have seen a couple people kind of verbalize this in a similar way, that this isn't a fantasy story at all. It is like a historical fiction story. I don't know whether it actually names a country or kingdom or whatever, but it's kind of vaguely, generically European, but there's no magic or anything. This is regarded as like, this is just medieval or feudal, kind of feudal historic kingdom, training to be a knight. If you're into that kind of thing, then check it out. I don't know whether or not I will continue reading this in print. It was sweet and lovely. It didn't like super duper impress me, but if you like this kind of girl in shining armor type of story, then check it out. It's not bad. I don't want to give the impression that it's bad or not worth reading. I did like it. I just, for me personally, don't know if I would come back to it and reread it. And despite my love of, slice of life and iyashike and edu manga and things like that, I have a lot of series like this, both kind of grounded in like real life and then also fantastical. I don't tend to seek like accurate historical history representation necessarily. I have like actual historical books about history to do that. For my comics, I tend to enjoy stuff with a little bit more touch of like the fantastical. That's a me preference. And again, that's not to say that this is bad or anything. It's not a huge amount of commitment if you are wanting to try it. But for me, it's probably going to be continued as a digital read. Next, we have the other debut, also from Seven Seas. This is one that was like a surprise. I put it on my licensing wish list, but I was actually very surprised when Seven Seas licensed this. So I picked up the first volume to show my support. This is a series that I watched the anime for and really loved. So this is Polar Bear Cafe, the collector's edition, volume 1 by Aloha Higa. This is a comedy slice of life manga about a polar bear who runs a cafe. It's actually about the panda that like goes to his cafe all the time. There's also a third main character who's a penguin. A lot of it is for Coma. I believe this started as like a Twitter comedy manga, which obviously gained popularity and then got an anime adaptation. 50 episodes, very good. 50, it might even be longer. And very like, it is for Coma, very humor focused, and very pun focused. And I did know that, but I kind of forgot like how much this series is based off of puns, and I don't know if I like the way that Seven Seas decided to kind of maintain that. I don't know if there was a better way. Like, I'm not a translator, and this is not you know, me saying anything bad about the translation. I think they did a fantastic job, but I do think that like inherently some of these jokes, some of these puns aren't funny because they are hard to translate to English, but because they're visually incorporated in the comic, you can't just like replace like for like with a more suitable or, you know, more effective English pun. As the series goes on, I do think there's like pun stuff interspersed, but it becomes more about the characters and the comedy, the situational comedy, more than just like play on words. I'll try and show you what I mean. But yeah, so their artwork is like that. Here's a good example, right? So we have, are you buying a car? And then there's this kind of joke, and then they're having this conversation, and Panda keeps thinking of things that are kind of related to that, but they're again plays on words, so they sound the same as the previous thing or similar. And so it's like, oh, 10 cars parked in a row, 10 shots in a row, 10 headbands in a row, 10 kisses in a row, and underneath it has like in brackets what the Japanese pun is. So again, you can see like Juretsu Chusha, but inherently different. And then Juretsu Kachusha, so a little bit different. And then Juretsu Chu, so again, similar but a little bit different. And I don't think that's funny. Like, I've watched this show and it's very sweet. It is funny. I think some of the other jokes, especially like the idea that, you know, these animals kind of just live normally amongst humans. Panda works as a panda in the zoo. Like, there's a lot of really funny bits with this series, but the pun element isn't funny, or it doesn't work in English, and the way that it's been maintained in this release, and just the prevalence, especially early on, it's not funny for me. I do really appreciate that that's a really hard thing to do, and in some cases probably impossible to adapt. In saying that, I'm very happy that this is being released. Again, this is probably not one that I will continue in print. I will read the rest of it in digital form, because I am very, like, I don't want to sound ungrateful. I'm very happy that this is in English, and I do hope more people try the series. It's a good time. I don't think it's going to be like rock-roarously hilarious to everybody. Especially if you're not into puns. Again, I think the situational comedy and kind of the absurdity of humans and animals like living in coexistence of modern time, but then also like all of these animals work at the zoo and people go pay money to go see animals at the zoo, even though, you know, tigers and polar bears and whatever kind of just go to the grocery store. You know, it's funny. That stuff is funny. And I think the characters themselves are really sweet and genuine, and there's a lot of really great moments. But yeah, I don't think the puns work, personally. Also, this is a collector's edition because in Japan, this was released in 5 volumes. The 7 Seas edition will be released in 4 volumes. They also have color pages in the back, and so some which are comics. Others are like these little cutouts, so you can make your own like paper doll versions of the characters, which is also like something that they did for the anime. A lot of the ending sequences featured those paper dolls. Well, then that's a fun little extra, but I don't know how many people will be brave and game enough to cut out those things from their book. But if you love the series and you want to, then maybe feel free. It's your book. It's your copy. You might also just want a photocopy and then you use that. Yeah, Polar Bear Cafe, happy to see it available in English. I never expected this to be licensed, and the fact that it was is just like amazing to me. On to the ongoing manga. Okay, what do I want to talk about first? First, we have, all of the large trim ongoing manga. So the first is a series that I just recently started. The first volume only came out end of last year. Yeah, end of last year. So this is volume 2 of Yakuza Fiance, Reis wa Taningai by Asuka Konishi. This is also released by 7 Seas. This is the story of the granddaughter of a Yakuza leader, head of a Yakuza family, who just wants like a normal life. She doesn't consider herself Yakuza. She hates the fact that her grandpa is like this very prominent Yakuza member. But one day her grandfather tells her, "Oh, I've arranged for you to get married to the grandson of this other Yakuza family." And she's annoyed, absolutely. But she decides to go to, because she's from Osaka, she decides to go to Tokyo to meet this guy who she is now engaged to. With the idea that he's kind of like her, he doesn't want anything to do with the family, he's not violent or anything. But we very quickly learn that is not the case. He definitely has a screw loose, very violent and possessive and obsessive tendencies. And he pretends to be normal for a little while, but gets bored of that very, very quickly. Basically insults her to her face, and then and she gets really pissed off at that, so she kind of throws those words back in his face. And because he had said, like, he can't pretend to play this, like, normal guy, and he hates the idea of just a girl who, you know, is sweet and kind and whatever. He wants his woman to be bad to him. He is a huge masochist, and he would die for a girl who abuses him, pretty much. And so when she kind of throws all of his horrible stuff that he's done and said to her back in his face, he just falls head over heels, and becomes, just totally enamored, is dead set on them getting married. And again, she is not keen on this, but she decides, in order to get like full revenge, not only on this guy but his whole family, that she is going to make him fall in love with her, and then like a year in, just like fall hopelessly completely in love with her. And then once he's like beyond, which he's like already there, she's going to break up with him and just break his heart and ruin his life, which is like, I don't want to say it's a solid plan, because these are not normal people. It's also an indication that she is not a normal person, and you could argue like this is a very toxic relationship, but they are like the right amount of toxic for each other. It's, again, a relationship that you can see working because they understand each other, or they know how to deal with each other. Not one that is healthy in any way, shape, or form, but that's fine. This is fiction. Not everything has to be good, like representation, or a good idea. Yeah, so this is just a continuation of the first volume. We have more of our characters just doing bad stuff and making scary decisions. We get introduced to what I presume is kind of the rival love interest character in there. I love this series. It's red flag central, but man oh man, that just makes it all the more interesting and exciting to read. This is just fantastic. It's one that's won a bajillion awards in Japan. Well deserved. It's one that, again, found great popularity in the scanlation kind of fandom, I guess. It was very popular prior to its license, and I'm not surprised it was licensed. We also have from this creator another series, a single volume or omnibus volume called Haru's Curse, which is also very good if you haven't read it. And I think that one, it's pretty good suspicion that was to test the waters to see whether or not this kind of darker kind of romance series would sell well. And there's a market for everything. I am definitely here to buy this one. It's one that I included, or we spoke about in our favorite new debuts for the last year in the December podcast. It's one that's just really, really good. And I look forward to volume 3. Next, we have volume 2 of a very different series, a different style of series. This is volume 2 of Runaway with Me Girl by Batan. This is released by Kodansha. 4 volumes in Japanese, so we are halfway through the English edition, I believe. I don't think it's 3, it's 4. This is the story of 2 young women, they're in their late 20s, who were dating in high school, but after graduation, one of them basically dumped the other one with the line that, oh, well, we're adults now, we can't, we can't play house, this idea that lesbianism or being queer is a youthful folly. But just totally broke this other girl's heart. Subsequently, she never really moved on. She's single and working her job and not really hasn't really had any kind of relationship with anyone else since. But coincidentally, they run into each other. It's been 10 years and they reconnect. They still have this like spark, and they definitely, there's definitely an interest and attraction and love there. But this other girl who was the one to break it off, she's now engaged to this guy. She's pregnant with his child, and she's, planning to get married to this dude very soon. But we learn pretty quickly that she's not really happy with her life. She's just, again, playing to the expectations of what young women are supposed to do and be excited for. Her relationship with this dude as well isn't very good. And so, as the title kind of implies, I don't know if it's happened because I personally haven't read this volume yet. I just got it the other day. The idea that, you know, they run away together to get out of this horrible situation, because, yeah, especially for one of them, she's been trying to adhere to society's expectations for her and has been since, you know, the very beginning. And hopefully now that the two have reconnected, they get a better idea of who they are and what they want, and, you know, become less afraid of going against the grain. This is beautiful, phenomenal, absolutely, really, just, I love this book, this series. If you're wanting a good Yuri series, then check this one out. I love Batan's art style as well. Yeah, it's just, this was one that, again, had a lot of popular buzz around it. It's one that I saw on social media a lot. I also follow the artist, or I follow Batan, so I see their artwork quite a bit. But yeah, highly recommend you check it out, especially if you're wanting kind of a little, if you want a good solid Yuri drama, and especially one that deals with kind of a little bit more difficult subjects. I'd say it's more in line with something like Even Though We're Adults compared to, I don't know, Still Sick or something. Yeah, Run Away With Me, Girl, check it out. Last for the large trim ongoing manga is a series that I adore. This is a slow living Yashike fantasy series, one from Yen Press. It's also from Harto Magazine, aka Fellows, aka whatever it's called now, which is the home of many of my favorite series. So this is volume 10 of Hakume and Mikochi by Takuto Kashiki. This is the story of two young, they're probably, I don't know, they're not humans, but they're like teensy little humans, borrowers, you could say, in the style of Arrietty, in their day-to-day lives, living in the forest, with all the other small teensy people and the animals. It's really whimsical and lovely. Yeah, and just has some fantastic, like, this honestly is one of the most beautiful, most well thought stories, especially for this kind of setting. I love this. I have like a lot of nostalgia for this idea of like a forest creature, like woodland creatures, and their tiny towns and their businesses. Oh yeah, we also get Hakume's backstory in this particular volume, which is so sweet, and I'm going like teary. But I have a lot of nostalgia for this kind of, this woodland creature kind of set up in the style of like Wind in the Willows, or Toad and Frog, or there used to be a show, I don't remember what it's called at all, but it was kind of this similar setting. They were all animals, they weren't human, like borrower style, but I do like the borrowers as well. And when I was younger, my mother actually built a dollhouse for me and my younger sister, but I was older, so I played with it for longer and first. And it was this big dollhouse in the shape of a tree, and it had 5 or 6 different levels, and so the bottom 2 floors were a home, and then the middle 2 floors were a home, and then the top floor was another home. And instead of like dolls, we had the little Salvanian family animals. So we had a rabbit family down the bottom, and then a mouse family in the middle, and then my mother made handmade little owls for the top. And I don't know if the Salvanian families actually had like owls. This is a long time ago, like a very long time ago. This is probably 2000, 2001. So I don't know whether or not, you know, the Salvanian family animals were available. They did have like the plastic houses and stuff for them, but this was just like the most beautiful, grand toy treehouse ever. Just a like an amazing piece of artwork. Such a tremendous act or creation of love. And so this series like really reminds me of that. So there's probably a little bit of nostalgia and adoration from my like that in my life being projected onto this. But honestly, this is such a good series. Even without that, I think I would enjoy this. It's just really, really well done. Hakume and Mikochi are fantastic characters. All the side characters are really interesting. They're also, like, Hakume and Mikochi are very different personality-wise, and I think that really works well. Yeah, it's just wonderful. There's a whole storyline about a group of the, Hakume and Mikochi and a bunch of their friends going to a hot springs or a public bath, staying the night at an inn there. And just like the creativity and imagination to how that would work in a society where you have, all these little people living in like quote unquote the normal world. So, like all of these plants and animals are a lot bigger than them. Like one of their friends, she's a beetle, who's like smaller than them, but also like not comparatively to like Hakume. She works with quite a few animals, including a raccoon and a ferret or a weasel, and they're like much larger than she is. So there's this conversation and acknowledgement of like how all of these various creatures and people interact with each other, and how their town and society at large has adapted to that. It's really, really good. It's really good, you guys. Read it. It used to be print only from Yen Press, but they recently released it in digital format as well. So if you are someone who prefers to read digitally or doesn't collect physical manga or whatever else it is, read it that way. It's well worth it. It's well worth it. It's a Harta series. I love it. Check it out. Okay, on to the standard size manga, or mostly standard size manga. First one is from Dark Horse. This is the latest volume of a series that I really super duper enjoy. We are getting close to the end now. This is Mob Psycho 100 by 1, volume 10. This is the comedy coming of age manga about a middle school boy with psychic powers, his con artist mentor, and the other psychics that he comes across in his day-to-day life. And sometimes he just has to save the world, whilst also dealing with that damn thing called puberty, which can be a hell of a time. I love Mob Psycho. It's my favorite out of One's works. I've never collected One Punch Man. I have seen the anime adaptations of it, and I do like it. But I find this funnier and also just kind of more sweet I think it's a more powerful story. It's also way shorter at 16 volumes. It was a surprise license when Dark Horse announced this, and it's been releasing for quite a few years now. It's one of these series that kind of, I guess, kick-started Dark Horse's renewed interest in manga publishing, or at least manga publishing that wasn't just Berserk, which has been good because prior to that, they were pretty notorious for just, not really having much interest, not finishing series, not keeping things in print, really small print runs, all sorts of things. So Mob Psycho, I think, was the first time that I, at least, had seen them. And there was a lot of hesitation from everyone, including myself, that they would finish the series, but they've been pretty consistent with the releases. It did slow down over COVID, but I think that's just a testament to, everything that was happening with COVID. I'm not going to blame the global pandemic on Dark Horse and slower release schedules, because it was something that affected everyone. But this is a fantastic series. I highly recommend the anime adaptation as well. It's just an all-around good time. Definitely check it out if you haven't. And I look forward to continuing and hopefully completing this series. Next we have a Yen Press title, or Yen Press release. This is the most recent print release. I've already read this one digitally because I love the series so much that I do try to read it. I tend to buy it digitally first and then reread it when I get the print copy. But this is volume 17 of Toilet Bound Hanakokun by Aida Iro. This is the story of a high school girl who summons the spirit Hanako-san, or in this case Hanakokun, in order to get her wish granted. In doing so, she inadvertently becomes the human assistant of this ghost in her school. But lots has happened since then. So much has happened, and over the last couple of volumes we've been learning more about who Hanako-kun was during his life, his relationship with his family, why he is a ghost in this school. It's a fantastic series. I absolutely love it. I love the art style as well. It's very, very good, very stylish, has some real personality, and man, this is just the perfect mix of like fun, goofy stuff, and then just hard-hitting drama that'll just emotionally wreck you. The amount of times I've been giggling, and not so much in most recent volumes, but the amount of times I've been giggling, or there's been a really effective joke, and then like 2 pages later you're just hit with some really tough, like a big twist, or something is revealed that's just absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know, man. It's just so good at balancing that sort of thing. It reminds me a lot of Noragami in that regard. And I haven't made that comparison before, but I do think that if you're a fan of Noragami, you will really, really like this one. Holic is kind of a similar kind of classic, or more... Holic isn't a classic series, but it's certainly an older example of this, and I do think, again, if you like Holic, then you will probably enjoy this one. It's fun, it's quirky, definitely my kind of series. I really, really recommend you try it out. As I've said from the very first volume, don't be put off by the toilet bound in the title. It has nothing to do with toilets or any sort of scatological element or humor. It's literally that in real life, in the Japanese urban legend of Hanako-san, which this character is like meant to be representing. The urban legend goes that you go to a certain bathroom stall in the girl's bathroom and you say her name 3 times and she will appear and grant your wish. So that is what is meant by the toilet bound. Literally lives in the girl's bathroom, or Hanako-san is found in the girl's bathroom. And that is, again, that's not anything. So there's not a lot of time. There's time spent in the bathroom, obviously, in this series, but it's not about that. It's not about that. That's just the framing device for this particular urban legend that Aida Ero has decided to use for these characters. Yeah, so check it out if you haven't. It's fun, funny, will ruin your life, and yeah, it's very, very good. Can't wait for volume 18. On to the Shoujo Beat titles. We have 2. First one is The King's Beast by Rei Toma. This is volume 9. The loose spin-off of Dawn of the Arcana. But a standalone series. You can absolutely just read this on its own. Although I do think Dawn of the Arcana is good, is worth the read, but it is a much older and earlier work of Rei Toma's. This is, in my opinion, the better series, although we do have allusions to Dawn of the Arcana in this one. We have kind of crossover characters, but again, you don't really need to have read that to understand this one. It's kind of just a wink wink, nudge nudge to any readers who have read all of Toma Sensei's work. This is, oh my gosh, this is a very pivotal volume. There's a lot going on. A very large thing has happened. There has been a lot. I don't want to spoil much, but one of the big conflicts has happened in this particular volume, and I'm surprised that it resolved itself in the way, or as easily as it did. Maybe not inherently, because I do think that Toma's conflicts tend to be addressed and wrapped up fairly quickly once it gets to that point. You don't have a lot of drawn out conflict, or confrontations, I should say. Not a lot of drawn out confrontations compared to something like Yona, where you'll have, on a larger scale, but like a couple volumes dealing with a certain situation. I've noticed that Toma's works tend to have things wrapped up within a couple chapters, which means that this is quite like high paced. Yeah, this is very, very good. I'm interested to see how the story will continue from here. We have inklings or allusions as to, there is still more they have to address. The story isn't quite done. Not everything is wrapped up in a nice, neat bow. I know there's like 12 volumes in Japanese right now. It more than 9, obviously. And it's still ongoing from my understanding. So we still have a bit more to cover over this series. But insofar as like relationship development, and also like one of the major issues, and also our main character's motivation to why she's in this situation has kind of been addressed. But yeah, we have new things being introduced, so hopefully that's where the stories will continue. For those who don't know anything about the series, this is a kind of a fantasy world wherein there are a humanity-like race of people called Ajin, who are basically just humans with animal features, typically ears and a tail, and strength. Typically the males or the men of Ajin men are sent to war, used as like, you know, labor. And they're also like a second class citizen, less than, they're basically slaves, or they are slaves really. They're not treated as humans. And then in this series, it introduced the idea that women, you know, Ajin women, are not used as warriors or field workers or whatever else. They are usually relegated to sex work, pretty much entirely. So basically, our main character, after she hears that her twin brother is murdered when he joined kind of the inner sanctum of the castle, or the emperor's, you know, whatever. So when she was much younger, her brother was chosen to be the young bodyguard of the fourth prince of this country. But very soon into him starting there, he was brutally murdered. And she suspects that it was the fourth prince who did it, if not him, somebody there. So she's trying to find out who and get revenge. In order to do so, she has to pretend to be a man, and she coincidentally becomes, she's angling for it. She decides to become, and successfully becomes, the new bodyguard for the fourth prince in the castle. And so now she is trying to find out what really happened to her brother and to get revenge on the whole situation. And then over the course of the series, things are revealed, truths are uncovered, feelings start to bubble. It's very, very good. If you like this, again, fantasy, romance, very action focused, political scheming drama, in a similar, it's like Dawn of the Arcana, sort of a similar vein to that, obviously. It's good. I like it a lot. This is definitely my favorite of Toma's works, and I think if you are a fan of Dawn of the Arcana specifically, check this one out because it is wonderful. Next, and finally, for the quote-unquote normal manga, we have the most recent volume of Snow White with the Red Hair by Sorata Akiduki. This is volume 23. Oh my goodness, this series is so long, but I love it so much. We have our characters trying to uncover a mystery, specifically regarding a perfume and the effects it may be having on various partygoers. The volume ends on a cliffhanger, and we are very concerned about what's happening to Obi, who is one of the main supporting characters at least. So our main character, who is Shiryuki, she's traveling around currently in the story, she's traveling around with her assigned bodyguard, Obi, as well as her co-worker, Ryu, who is also a court herbalist, as they, over the last several volumes, have been trying to convince various towns to plant this particular flower that they've been developing in order to increase light and illumination options within these areas that get very impacted by snow specifically. It's really interesting, but across the course of this, they are, as always, getting caught up in political drama, and subsequently they have this perfume mystery to address. I haven't seen a lot of Zen in particular in this volume. That's not that surprising. He does poke his head in, but this part of the story is much more focused on Shiryuki and Obi and Ryu and their travels. I'm sure we will pop back in with Zen. We've had quite a few volumes with a pretty even balance, so I'm not surprised that we're spending a little bit more time with them. Yeah, fantastic series. I talk about it a lot. I really enjoy this one. It is longer, but it's one of those series that I find, as despite it being longer and continuing and being ongoing, it just stays really, really good, really consistent. And I really like all the characters. They're fun to read about. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. On to BL manga. We have a bunch of single volumes or, one and done BL from Tokyopop's Love line. The first one is The Flower That Seems to Truly Dance by Saki Sukahara. Of the 3 newer releases that I got from Tokyopop, this is probably the one that I was least... I liked the least. I did like it. I think it was solid. This is a historical drama set during the war, Second World War, featuring 2 young men who were friends in childhood, became fairly estranged. One of them moved overseas and studied overseas. He comes from a very wealthy family. The other, who is a renowned and well-known dancer, a geisha dancer specifically. They reconnect sort of once the other comes back from Germany, and they initially the one returning from Germany hides his true identity because he thinks that the other guy hates him because of something he said in the past, wherein the reality is, of course, no, he's been in love with him this whole time. But they kind of reconnect, and they very obviously have feelings for each other, but alas, societal expectation means that one of them is engaged and their love cannot be. And then also there's a war happening, so their town is being firebombed and all these sorts of horrible things are happening. Ultimately, one ends up going to war. But of course, happily ever after, they find each other once again, and damn society who says they can't be together. We'll for happily ever after. It certainly ticks a lot of boxes into the stuff that I like. I'm a big fan of childhood friends lovers. I'm a big fan of historical drama and historical fiction. I like this. I like when stories feature traditional arts. There's a lot of good in this series. This also not explicit at all. There's a fade to black scene, but there's nothing or at least I don't remember. Oh, there might be one sexy scene at the end. But the art's pretty standard. My personal issue with this book is, and again, it's not bad. I think it has a much grander story than it can fit in a single volume, and so it feels a little bit rushed in order to hit all of the stuff that this mangaka wanted to introduce in this story, because you have all this time spent with one pretending to be someone else, and then they quickly reveal that, and they then are on the same terms, but then something else happens, and that has to happen pretty quickly, and then another bad thing happens. Stuff just keeps happening. There's not a huge a great idea of the passage of time. This could have happened over weeks, it could have happened over months. Presumably the whole volume happened over at least a year, especially considering one of them went to overseas to fight to fight in the army. And then the end of the war is in this, so like it's hard to follow because there's a lot going on in not a lot of pages and a lot of time squished into the 150 or 80 or whatever else pages that this is. So it's not bad. I didn't dislike it, but I personally, for me, it's a one and done read. I would recommend maybe a digital read for people, or if you like this sort of thing, then check it out, absolutely. But yeah, it's not like the best execution of this premise either, so your mileage may vary on this one. Next, we have another Tokyo Pop Love release. This is one that I was pretty interested in trying. It was one out of like the handful that they had announced at the same time that I was like, that sounds interesting and something that I'd like. And that is The Snake Who Loved a Sparrow by Natsuo. This is, as the title implies, about a sparrow and a snake who kind of run into each other and ultimately fall in love, but because of them being like literally predator and prey, they have very different life experiences. This is really interesting because obviously like this is a sparrow and a snake. They're in human form, but they do like switch between animal and human forms. And when they're in their human forms, they still retain their animal tendencies. Like the snake obviously is cold-blooded, so he runs very cold. The bird, the sparrow, he doesn't have like genitals at all, which is like true to sparrow. Well, he does, but not like outward outward male genitalia in the way that humans do. And then conversely, the snake has like more genitalia than humans would be probably familiar and or comfortable with. I don't know. I don't have that, so maybe dudes would be all excited for that. I don't know, but that also like brings into question. So when their relationship starts to get physical, there's a lot of trepidation around that. And they have like some ongoing stuff, and like it resolves itself in a very like wish fulfilling, like, oh, we're kind of spirits anyway, so we have magic to fix things. So it's a non-issue. But I did find it interesting that the premise or the idea of these characters being animals and very different animals was so prominent outside of like the racism, quote unquote, aspect of it. It's not right. Like, you know what I mean. Like the speciesism, the separation of species. Yeah, this is also like a way steamier book than maybe I was expecting. I really like the art. I think there's a lot of really wonderful expressions here. I'm also trying to make sure it doesn't open on something too steamy. Again, like kind of it's a one and done. So like there's a lot of faster relationship stuff happening, but I do think that is pretty well done. I really like the snake character. He's certainly the focus of the book and has the most like conflict, internal conflict throughout this comic. It's good. It's really solid. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. And yeah, if you like reading about snake dicks and I don't know, all sorts of just how a snake and a sparrow could fall in love, then this is the book for you. Even more so than like other like animal BL, where like there's some superficial similarities, whether it's tails and ears, and maybe one's cold-blooded, one's warm-blooded. Like, I think some of those aspects are pretty consistent when you have, you know, relationships that cross species barriers, especially between predator and prey species. But, like, the actual physical differences in, like, how animals and certain animal groups are intimate, and also courtship is really well done in this book, which is like a silly thing maybe to highlight in what is ultimately just like, well, it's a pretty by the numbers BL, which has some pretty quite a few spicy scenes, and like, you know, that's not a detriment to it, but like for what it is, it has like more exploration of the premise than I expected. So yeah, maybe check it out if that sounds interesting to you. Finally, for the Tokyo Pop like one and done books that I got, this is Scram Blues by Mame March. This is one that I like. This is the one that I heard the most mixed reviews on. I don't know too many people that like loved this one. I've seen quite a few reviews and people like tweeting about it. They might have liked it, but they had issues, or it didn't jive with them. So I went into this one maybe a little bit hesitant or with lower expectations. I don't always have like super high expectations for one and done books just in general, but I was surprised in how much I actually really liked this one. It's probably my favorite of the lot. This is by Mame March and is about a guy who's, I think he's a graphic designer, or he works for a graphic design, or he works as a graphic design company in marketing, basically. So he asks to be put in charge of a really high profile project. He hasn't really had much success up until this point, and he's fairly new to the job, but he asks to be put in charge of a very high profile project, which is designing the new CD or album artwork of a hit sensation musical artist called Eddie Astley. Just like prodigy genius. He does all of these film soundtracks, and he's just hugely popular. But he is also notoriously hard to work with. He's if he doesn't like something, he will tell you about it, and he's not going to sugarcoat his dislike and his issues for anyone, which is the case when he sees the first kind of concept ideas for this album and just is not having it. He doesn't like this guy. He's not, he's not playing nice, and he's like, oh, you really don't understand my music and what we're doing with this, and blah, 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 blah. But our main character finds out that Eddie is actually like best friends with the vocalist or guitarist or something of his favorite band. Like, he is a big fan of this up and coming band. He finds out that, yeah, this vocalist slash guitarist is like best friends with Eddie. And so he kind of meets Eddie as like out in a personal way, like outside of a professional way, not just as a client, not just as a superstar. And so they have this like weird, not quite friendship, but he starts to see him as more than just the prodigy, musician that the media treats him like. And he decides to really try and figure out a way to capture, who is Eddie Astley for this debut album. Or this most recent album, I guess. It might not be his debut album. I can't remember. Meanwhile, Eddie, we learn about his life, his relationship with music, his relationship with his grandfather, who's the one who taught him or gave him his love of music, and the disconnect that he's felt from music and performance and vocals, like singing, since the death of his grandfather, and having to come to terms with his feelings and his emotional connection to the people important to him, and like why he creates music, right? Like this existential question of the artist. I really liked the series. It's really, like at the end of the book, there's implied, these two end up together, but it's not like anything. There's a confession, but there's nothing explicit in here. You do see like more established scenes of them together at the end, like in the extras and things, but it's more about the journey of these two characters, and especially Eddie, like coming to terms with who he is and his relationship to music, and I thought it was really well done. Like, I really did enjoy this one a lot. Eddie Astley reminds me a lot of Yurio, or Yuri Plisetsky from Yuri on Ice. Just that kind of like bratty blonde, I'm a genius. Not even that. Like, he's older, he's a bit more mature, he's a bit more self-aware. He doesn't call himself a genius, but he's got that bratty attitude. Well, I guess like Yuri Plisetsky, where he wants his hard work recognized. Again, that idea of a prodigy. Like, you can have talent, but the most talented and successful people are the ones who put in the hard freaking work. And so I really liked that aspect of it. I don't know, he reminded me of Yurio, and I like Yurio and this kind of character archetype quite a bit. It was very likable. And then again, like this relationship that Eddie has with his music and what he wants it to be and who he wants to be, and finding someone who's like, for the first time, making him reflect on that. It's really good. Again, apparently this was one that maybe didn't resonate with a lot of people, but I really liked this one. I thought it was very good, and you know, I'm here to read about a grumpy musician who reminds me of my favorite grumpy figure skater, and there's no like, I think also the relationship development between the characters, although it's not inherently the focus point of the series, and you can make an argument of like, oh, that maybe came out of the blue. There's no like questioning or, you know, distraught, oh, you know, this is for our main character, for this Japanese guy who's like, what? I've never liked boys before. But that was actually really refreshing. I'm very happy they didn't have that scene. He was a bit like, oh my god, I have feelings for this guy, and I'm not gonna say anything because he's all famous, and also I'm working kind of for him, and like there's other things that he's stressed about, but it's not like, what? I could be gay? Or I'm in love with a man? There's not that, which is, again, really refreshing. Yeah, I just really liked this book. I liked it. It was good. And I think their relationship, like, you could understand why they started spending more time together, how that could develop into feelings of affection that are more than just, you know, friendship. And so, yeah, as I said, you're not gonna have, like, the gratuitous sex scene at the end of this, but you do get a friggin' very satisfactory and satisfying hug, and I was like, hell yeah. Yeah, Scramblers. I liked it quite a bit. On to the ongoing manga. We will continue with Tokyo Pop releases. This is my favorite BL. Like, I don't know. I have a lot of, like, I love a lot of series. This is probably my favorite ongoing BL right now, and that's a high bar to hit. It just has everything that I love. Travel, people in love, Really sweet characters, really well written relationship. Not everything's happy and lovely, and they have their issues, and they have their history. Man, I forget. Oh my gosh, this is Are Not So Lonely Planet Travel Guide by Mone Sorai. Yeah, this is honestly like my favorite BL. Certainly of all time, it's in like the top 5. Certainly in the top 10, if not the top 5. And it is by far the BL I most look forward to getting a new volume for, which is not like I would have never expected that. I was looking forward to this series when it was licensed and when the first volume came out. I didn't really know much about it. I'd seen it, I'd seen pages of it floating around on Twitter and such, but again, I can't read Japanese and I don't follow a lot of stuff on scanlations or anything. So when I picked it up from Tokyo Pop, I was like, oh, we'll see how this is. And again, I can be quite hit or miss on Tokyo Pop's love line, especially their BL. Well, all of it, but I tend to pick up the BL stuff. And this was just like, oh, it is almost as if it was written for me. I love this series so much. Yeah, I could not recommend the series more highly. This is about 2 guys, boyfriends, who are traveling the world together. It's the first time that either of them have traveled, certainly as adults. First time they've traveled as a couple. First time they've, ever spent any time out of Japan. And it's allowing them to experience the world, meet all sorts of different people, discover very different cultures to Japan, and also very different people to Japanese people. And as a sexual minority, as gay men, they have a freedom in some countries that they would never have imagined in having in Japan. And then also they have other places that they visit that aren't as open and accepting and are actively hostile to gay people, gay and queer people. It's it's such a love letter to travelogue and to traveling, to meeting and experiencing the world and broadening your perspective. And especially for our main character, he, as someone who's always been very self-conscious, been very self-hating about himself. He's never liked the fact that he was gay. He's never had kind of the support that, or never felt comfortable about coming out. He has this wonderful relationship with this guy who he has loved for a long time, but always saw that as a problem with himself in his youth. He just didn't want to acknowledge his feelings and saw them as, broken and wrong and all those other horrible things that get told to young queer people. There's the internalized homophobia. And then now meeting more people who are accepting of him, seeing the world outside of his insular bubble, being away from the expectations of his family and work and Japanese society as a whole has really made him more comfortable with who he is and his relationship, and being open about being in love with this guy who just absolutely adores him. It's so good. It's just so good. And then the whole premise is that they're going to travel the world, see all these different places. It's this grand adventure, and then afterwards, if they get through all of that, and if they make it back in one piece, they'll get married. And I just, oh my god, you guys, I can't even talk. I'm just getting emotional just thinking about it. I love this series, as you can probably tell. I highly recommend this BL to anyone who likes a series about travel and travelogue, anyone who likes like romance series, just like good romance series, apps, like regardless of, you know, the gender, sexual orientation of the couple, read this one. It is so good. Yeah, that I love this series so much, and I cannot wait till volume 4. Next we have Yen Press release. This is volume 7 of Sho Harusono's Sasaki and Miyano. This is the first volume where our couple is together the whole time. Yeah, very, very solid developments from the previous volume. But we have the looming threat. Well, no, it's not even a looming threat. It happens. What our Sasaki senpai graduates, which means they're no longer going to the same school, and how will that affect our young couple? I really enjoy this series. I like the spin-off as well, but this is just really sweet. If you don't know what the series is about, it's about a fudanshi, which is a male BL fan. He through kind of certain situations, his senpai, his upperclassman, has secretly fallen in love with him. And although our main character like enjoys BL, he doesn't regard himself as gay. He doesn't like. He's like, oh, you know, I enjoy this, but it's not, you know, I'm not gay. It's not my preference. I just like reading this stuff. And you're like, okay, kid, okay. And he has a little bit of a hang-ups because he is smaller and cuter and has never been taken super seriously as a man up until this point. But over the course of the series, they grow closer as friends and ultimately get together because that's how these things work. Yeah, super sweet, cute, just a great time. This particular volume has some really wonderful elements to it, though, like some pretty popular and, well, not popular, but like some tropes that are pretty standard for this setting. Obviously, one person graduating, the separation of, you know, graduation and university and whatever else, that, but also coming out to family, not so in so many words necessarily. Sasaki has, there's this scene when Sasaki comes out to his sister, and initially it doesn't go very well, but them as a couple kind of mending that bridge and having like a proper discussion about it with her, and I think it was a really well done scene because although like she didn't initially accept it or didn't initially like know how to react, and she was quite upset when she found out, it wasn't because she inherently hated, like she was inherently homophobic. I think there's an element of her being afraid for her brother, and kind of the implications of being gay in a society where that's, you know, you're a minority. But also she just had never considered it, and she didn't really have a lot of experience with queer people, and had just never really thought about it. And so when she recognized that and how she reacted and how hurtful it was, she acknowledged that and apologized for it. I think it was like pretty well handled. There was a part when Miyano is talking about her Sasaki with his mom. He's wanting to invite him over to help with making some sweets for Valentine's Day, and kind of amidst that admits that, you know, that he's making these sweets for this guy that he's inviting over, and that you know, he doesn't say it in so many words, but she's like, oh, well, that's wonderful. Like, I'm happy, like, whoever you love, that's fantastic. And so, like, kind of the opposite, the very supportive mother is really sweet. And it was just very matter of fact. Like, there wasn't the big drama or sit down, like, coming out speech. And it was two very different experiences, shown in a very short subsequent couple chapters, and I thought it was very well done. There's also the first time that like intimacy is broached, not between each other. Well, yeah, actually, kind of. They sort of start a conversation about sex, not so frankly, but their relationship is getting a little bit more serious, more intimate. And there is a conversation to be had, especially for these two guys who this is their first like gay relationship, how that works, what their dynamic is, sexually, not personally, like personality wise, but like who sexual preferences in the bedroom. And they're both like young, so obviously they're still trying to figure it all out anyway. But I think it's done in a pretty good way. Like, I think it's portrayed very well, especially for young people just trying to figure it out. You know, you're attracted to someone and you care about someone and you want to take that next step in regards to being physically intimate. But yeah, especially if you have no background and you've not thought about it at all, if ever, about like what happens after we kissing. So I liked that conversation happened, and I liked the kind of, although it was like a little bit embarrassing, and you know, it's not always the easiest thing to bring up, that they did actually have, or at least start the conversation and start considering the other person. It's really good. I really like this. It's a fairly popular series, very popular anime adaptation. Check it out if you haven't. Last but certainly not least, for manga, we have the most recent volume, volume 6 of Yu Toyota's Cherry Magic. 30 years of virginity can make you a wizard. Our couple is finally together, and now we get to see them as a couple. Couple ups and downs. They are faced with imminent separation, even though they have just gotten together. And this particular volume ends on a pretty big cliffhanger, which is set to shake up the status quo that we've gotten used to so far. I really like this series. It's sweet, it's lovely, it's got a fun little gimmick, and the couple is just really well suited. Even though it's taken them this long to get together, it's great. Yeah, definitely check out Cherry Magic. It's got a really well done and well regarded live action adaptation, and yeah, it's just this. It is really, really good. I think most people are familiar with this series. If you haven't given it a try, check out this Square Enix books release. It's really very good, and it's one of those series that I read like immediately when I get a new volume. And it sucks because they're such short volumes. This was a web comic, or like social media comic, I think it's on Twitter. So like the chapters aren't super duper long and the books aren't super duper long, so you can read through it really quickly. And then I always want to read the next one like immediately. At the back of the book they always have like a snippet of the next chapter that will be in the next volume, and I read that and I'm like, oh my god, I just want to read more. It's really, really, really addicting. So yeah, check out Cherry Magic if you haven't. On to light novels. The first is a new volume of so it's the second to last volume, I think, for this arc. I don't know. I'm a little bit behind on the series. I haven't read any of this current arc. But this is Ascendance of a Bookworm. I'll do anything to become a librarian. Part 4. Founder of the Royal Academy's so-called Library Committee, Volume 4. So it's Part 4, Volume 4, by Miya Kazuki and illustrations by Yoshina. This is a very popular light novel series. I really enjoy this one. It's one of the few like isekai that I really enjoy. And at this point, it's probably, yeah, I think it's probably the most well-known, I don't know, it's hard to say because we have seen more and more like shoujo isekai being adapted. It's not quite the only male power fantasy dominated genre that it was. I mean, it certainly is still that. There's plenty of those, but we have seen more and more like Bacarina and things where young women get taken or die and end up in the world of their favorite, game or novel or just a fantasy world, which is the case of this, mine or main, depending on which version you're watching or reading, died at like 21 or 26, something like that. She died after recently graduating university. She was about to start her new life as a librarian, absolutely obsessed with books, but dies and ends up waking up in a fantasy world as a sickly young child, and basically just has to live her life, but also this fantasy world is very, very far behind the modern one in regards to literacy and like book availability. So she basically has to invent the printing press and, publishing as an entire industry so she can live out her real dream of being a librarian. It's it's a fun story. I really like all the characters. It's just really, 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 really good. There's 3 seasons of anime. I'm trying to remember if I've seen all of them. I think so. But yeah, I've been reading this series for a long time. It's one of the few J-novel series that I follow in print. I know that they do release it digitally as well as they do with all of their titles. But this was one of the first of theirs, and certainly the longest of their series that I have actually committed to the physical editions for. Although I am hoping, fingers crossed, that we do get a physical release in some capacity of the Apothecary Diaries, which they also released. That will be another one that I definitely pick up. And I've picked up, bits and pieces of their other stuff, J.K. Haru and Sexiled. I'm sure I've gotten more as well. I just can't think of them. But I'm pretty picky when it comes to light novels just because it's very, very easy to end up committed to like dozens of series that have dozens of volumes and they just go on and on and on and on. And this one is no exception to that. It has like 20 something volumes in the Japanese release, and every story arc gets longer and longer and longer. So and there's 8 parts. So we're roughly, I don't want to say we're halfway through because we're not. In regarding the like web novel version of this, because this series started as a web novel, as has a lot of J-novels releases. But I do think that parts wise we're hitting the halfway point, but that doesn't mean events-wise, we're hitting the halfway point, if that makes sense. Anyway, really good series. Definitely recommend it. A very different beast right now in the story to what it was at the very beginning. And yeah, be sure to check out and hopefully enjoy Mine's ongoing adventures in this new world that she's found herself in. Next, for light novels, then the other light novel that I got is the BL light novel Hirano and Kagiura. This is written by Kotoko Hachijo and a spin-off of Sho Harusono Sasaki and Miyano, which also has a Hirano and Kagiura manga spin-off as well. This, I think, is a prequel to that manga spin-off, but what kind of happens concurrently with the early parts of the Sasaki and Miyano series. I don't know, it's a little bit complicated. I haven't read this one, although it is quite short. I really like this setting. I like Harusono's world. I talked about Sasuke and Miyano already today, and I enjoy the Hirano and Kagiura like side couple, I guess, spin-off. For those who don't know, this is so Hirano senpai, or Hirano, is an upperclassman. He's the same age, and I think he's in the same class as Sasaki. They're friends, and he's also on the student council. He's the vice president, I think. And so Miyano is also on the student council, so they're all like quite close. Kagiura is his kohai, so he's younger. He's on the basketball team, and he's also Hirano's roommate. And he has harbored secret feelings for Hirano for a little while, but obviously is trying to hide that and not wanting to, change their current relationship. And this is, mainly kind of early setup. The initial launching of the spin-off, because this did come before the manga featuring these two. So as someone who does enjoy this series, it was a no-brainer. This has been released by Yen On, who also Yen Press releases the manga versions of all of these things. So yeah, really, really happy to see, not only, because obviously Yen On is quite established as a light novel publisher, certainly the major one for many, many years, but it's nice to see more, I don't want to say spin-off series, but the fact that it's a BL title for one, and also a spin-off of this. We do see spin-offs or franchise light novels quite a bit from Viz. Certainly all of their Naruto stuff, their upcoming Jujutsu Kaisen light novels, and I think there's a Spy Family one coming up as well. My Hero Academia, of course. All of those, and Full Metal Alchemist, how could I forget? All of those have gotten releases, which obviously are parts of larger manga or game or whatever franchises. So we haven't seen it. Well, I can't speak to it because I don't follow every release that they do, but it's nice that something that I'm interested in, and presumably Sasaki and Miyano is popular enough, especially thanks to the anime, that we have gotten this other additional spin-off content. So yeah, very happy about that. Can't speak to this one because I haven't actually read it yet. But yeah, look forward to it, and I probably will sit down and try and read it today because I have the day off. So yeah, that'd be really good. Next, we have a Danmei title book release that I've gotten. One of the more recent ones. This is Robao Buchiro. That might be totally horrible pronunciation. AKA Meat Buns, the Husky and his White Cat Shizun, AKA Urha, Volume 2. I still haven't read Volume 1. I'm just kind of, I just really haven't had time, to be frank with you, but this is one of Seven Seas' more, like, currently ongoing, danmei titles in English. It's finished in Chinese. But yeah, so I haven't I can't form any opinions on this series, although I do know that it's meant to be a rough time. So that's why it's not exactly the highest of my priorities, but I do want to get into it, especially now that a lot of the MXTX releases are kind of wrapping up. Modal Zushi is ending soon, and Heaven Official's Blessing. There's still a couple volumes to come out, or books to come out, but then we will see more non-MXTX danmei, including this one, this Meatbun being the first author that they've been focusing on. We also have a couple, or at least one other title from Meatbun, which is Case Files Compendium, also coming out from Seven Seas. And then we have stuff like Thousand Autumns and Chopin, I think is, well, so no, I don't know, Guardian, I don't know. It's been a while. Regardless, I'm probably going to be reading all of them. I just need to actually sit down and read this one. But again, I'm a little bit hesitant because I just know that I'm going to be emotionally damaged. But that's nothing new when it comes to danmei, so that's fine. Yeah, super popular series, so I look forward to when I get into it. Last but certainly not least, we have a collection of, I guess, novels and written works from one of my favorite authors. This isn't related to, like, yeah, Japanese or Chinese properties at all. This is the Library of America's Hainish Novels and Stories collection, all written by Ursula Le Guin, obviously. For those who don't know, Le Guin was a just basically revolutionized what fantasy and sci-fi was, and it has hugely influenced what we regard in those genres now. She basically wrote the book for modern fantasy, especially stuff that isn't very obviously Tolkien-esque. The diversity of her characters as well, and her interest in exploring things like just kind of stuff that is inherently very radical, even now, in her works, is just phenomenal. So the Hainish novels are her major sci-fi series, the Hainish cycle, I should say, which includes all of these wonderful stories here, plus a bunch of short stories. I already have the folio editions of The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed, but like a lot of things, I'm not inherently waiting or expecting folio to do any more Hainish novels, at least. They have committed to all of Earthsea, which is her major fantasy, especially young adult fantasy series that she wrote. So I have been buying those, and I'm looking forward to the rest of those. Those are only 6 books though, so I don't think we would necessarily get all of these books in like single edition, or singles I should say. For those who don't know, the Library of America is a non-profit publisher that perhaps obviously publishes the works of very notable American writers, authors, which Le Guin is, hopefully, you know. But it isn't just Le Guin. There's a multitude of publisher or authors' works that they release. This collection and most of their collections are either like singular, like collections of all of the works that have been released from the author. In this case, Le Guin has quite a few releases from the Library of America. The Hainish stories are broken across 2 volumes, as you can see here, because these are like multiple novels plus short stories. Yeah, Library of America, as I said, is a non-profit. But all of their releases are hardcover, have dust jackets, and sewn binding, which is a big thing, especially for high quality publications. If you know anything about publishing, or you are particularly picky about your books and them, lasting for as long as possible, sewn binding is like certainly a lot better than glue binding, which is what you see in most releases, both paperback and hardcover in major publishers. Yeah, so if you are presumably you're a manga fan, if you're watching this, I don't think have a sewn binding manga release in my collection. I may be mistaken, but I don't think Berserk deluxe editions are. I don't think that any of the Viz or Udon or Seven Seas hardcovers are. I don't think that Vinland Saga is. It's not. I don't want to say it's uncommon, but it's certainly not common, especially for cheaper releases or budget. Like, it's just cheaper. It's cheaper to use glue. And in this current market of trying to get everything out as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, it's not often that you see bound pages, sewn bindings in major publishing at all, full stop. And that's not just for manga, that's across the board. So yeah, if you're someone who's particular about that, or if you're someone who's interested in reading some of the influential American novelists and writers, because there's some poetry collections as well, check out the Library of America. They do good work. For me, I own the folio editions of all of Le Guin's works that they've released, but as I said, I don't expect them all to be released. There's also not inherently a big push to keep all of her works in print, and certainly not with hardcovers. So I just wanted like a hardcover collection of all of the Hainish stuff, because there just isn't that option for me. Left Hand of Darkness does have a newer hardcover release from Penguin, plus the folio edition. I don't think Dispossessed does, but it's not I mean, it does, but it's out of print. A lot of them are out of print. And typically Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness are the ones that stay in print because they are the most popular, the most famous. And I think it's a shame to forget that there are some other phenomenal Hainish books in this cycle that I didn't want to miss out. So yeah, I got this one. So that's everything that I got for this month. Lots to get to, lots to enjoy. Great variety of merchandise. Even got some anime this month. It was a shorter month, but I saw a couple, I feel like my local comic shop is kind of getting caught up with some releases that were meant to, or that had been released, but they didn't get stock for till early this year. I'm still waiting on a handful of books from December and January from them. They haven't quite shown up, so hopefully sooner rather than later. So I'm not completely caught up, but they have been better about getting or having copies of new release stuff for that week or for that month. So I'm getting caught up, which is a good thing. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on any of the titles that I spoke about today. Do anything that you love, that you were really disappointed in? Do you agree or disagree with my thoughts on some of these titles? Let me know. As always, you can find me here or on Twitter at that's GEE_reads. I also, on this channel and on every podcasting platform, am a co-host for the Read Right to Left podcast, wherein we talk about all sorts of manga, whether it's a particular genre, whether it's a particular series or a creator. This past month, our first episode for the year, we discussed Sweat and Soap, the fantastic 11-volume romance series. And this coming month, March, we are talking about Clamp. So if you are wanting to follow that or hear that, you can either subscribe to the channel or find the Read Right to Left podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever else you get podcasts. Yeah. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.